So,
If we start with the farm that we're on now, it was Graham's for generations until 1940, December 1941. My father bought this farm, and this is Lot 2, Concession 8, East West half.
okay,
And I've lived here since 1948.
all right,
But the tools, as such, they go back to Moses Toole, and the 400 acres at the south side of the Harold Road,
all right,
and on the east and west side of the Center Street,
okay,
he owned the 400 acres in 1832.
okay,
And he divided it. He had 4 sons, Amos and Isaac and Aaron and Lewis. And I'm descended from Lewis.
okay,
And he gave the 4 sons a farm each.
wow.
And some of them didn't last very long. What I mean is, are you familiar with the Smalley Potato Farm?
Yes, I am. Yes,
That was one of them, and it was the first one to go.
okay,
It went to an Oldham family.
okay,
And then my grandfather, Lewis Toole, he owned the second place down from the Harold Road on the east side. That was his. And as he got to, I'm only roughly speaking here, into his 50s and early 60s, he bought back 2 of the other 3. So in the first, say, 10 or a dozen years of the 20th century, Lewis Toole owned 300 acres of the original 4.
wow,
And he died about 60, died relatively early. I never knew him. But his wife, Agnes Toole, lived on into the 30s. And during the war, my father and his brother farmed the 300 acres, paid off the debt on it.
how much was that?
I couldn't tell you that, but it wouldn't be figures like now. If it was 2,000 or 3,000 or so a farm, it would be a big debt.
Mm-hmm.
It couldn't possibly be over 7 or 8, or that's all it was worth.
Okay,
And they paid it off, and my grandmother died in the mid-30s. I must throw in a little story. I only met her once that I remember,
okay.
and the reason I remember her, she gave me a cookie.
Wow, what type of cookie?
Well, what kind would you like? I don't know, but I remember her because of the cookie. Otherwise, I wouldn't remember her.
Mm-hmm. And what was her name?
Agnes.
Agnes,
Yes.
from the Oldham families.
Yes,
Right,
yes, Agnes. And she lived into her 80s or early 80s and lived with my Uncle Clarence.
Okay.
And my father had 3 children. Ormond was the old, we were 2 boys and 1 girl. Ormond was the oldest. And then my sister, and then me.
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of 5 years apart.
Mm-hmm.
And my brother farmed on the first farm south of the Harold Road on the east side of Center Street. And that farm, he left it to his daughter, and it's just been sold to the Smalley farm.
Okay.
And so the Smalley farm that has the potatoes,
Mm-hmm.
they now own 3 of the original 400 acres.
And what did your ancestors farm?
Well, farming, it was desperation farming in the start, and get enough food to eat. But it was actually amazing how fast they cleaned the land, bared the land off. But once they got so they were farming, then it was for another century, it was mixed farming. You had some chickens, some pigs, some cattle, and the cattle for milk and butter for your house and something to sell.
Mm-hmm.
The pigs were all to sell, except they generally always in the fall would kill a pig and then it was salt cured.
Okay.
They could get it through the winter. That salt curing lasted till I was maybe 12 or 13. I remember that very well.
Really?
I remember the salt barrel.
I was speaking with a gentleman at the Historical Society. He says that the pork doesn't taste the same today.
Well, I'll tell you another story after a while.
Go ahead.
But it was, Mother rubbed the salt, the pork with salt, and then I can't honestly tell you how many times, but it wasn't just once. It was wrapped. She'd rub salt in it and put it in a wooden barrel, and it would be in the basement, and the salt would cure it. It wouldn't rot
Mm-hmm.
over winter. And she did the same with the hams, rubbed them with salt, and so it would seem was delicious. We'd have 2 hams off that pig, and she would cut off meat off the ham and soak it a little
Oh.
to get some of the salt out of it. You couldn't get it all.
Mm-hmm.
And you could have eaten that raw. I tasted it raw. But to let me jump 70 years, 50 years,
Mm-hmm.
when Beth and I were in the 80s and things were rolling good, eating in Toronto at Italian restaurants, and I'd never eaten prosciutto ham, that was the same thing.
Oh.
I put the prosciutto ham in my mouth, and it was like the raw ham Mother cut off.
Wow. And you buy prosciutto today, and it's expensive, but very expensive.
Yes, it is, but I just thought of the hams like you'll think of, but when I tasted the prosciutto, it was the same flaming
Wow.
thing.
Wow.
And my taste buds are good.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1983, Beth and I went with a company I sold corn for to Hawaii, and we went to a luau where they steam the pig underground and they cook it that way, and then they serve it as a delicacy, but to just vary a little. When I was a young boy, not more than 10 or 11, maybe before, but not much more than that. Like I couldn't do it, but Father could kill a pig. You just stick the knife in his heart and you let him bleed. And then there was a big barrel with hot water and salt in it. and you scraped the hair off the pig while it was in the hot water, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when I took the first mouthful of pork in that luau, the scent came back to my nostrils and I couldn't eat it.
Oh, wow.
I never tasted it. The scent of the scalding barrel was there. Nobody else knew it, but I was the one that smelt the salt
Wow.
barrel.
So, yeah, that's interesting.
Yes, but anyway, my neighbors here, the Oldhams, what are they? The Shim Grand. They're on their fourth generation now. Allen's the young is there now, and the Roses down here in well, Willie just died a little while ago. They've been there since about 1840. I'm not just sure that there'll be a half a dozen generations there. And Trevor, their son, is farming, so likely he will get that piece of land for continue on. And that the rest of the land has turned over more often. You know, it didn't stay in the family for forever and ever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a generation or two, and then was gone or to another. But there are some farms around go back a long ways.
Since we're speaking about farms, since we're on the subject of farms, yeah, let's talk about the other families, maybe. So you mentioned the Rose family farm?
Yes, it's just across the road. You've been in for strawberries, have you? Yeah.
And fries.
The French fries.
And French fries.
Oh, they're delicious. There's names here that I don't recognize. There's your farm. There's the Rose family farm. The Harrison farm. I've heard of it. Where was this?
It was in the next mile and a quarter up,
Okay.
north of the Harold Road.
Okay.
Just beyond the bend, you know.
Yeah, okay. So before Mount Albert Road?
Before that, about a little more than halfway.
Okay. Cole farm.
Know that.
Okay. Peg.
Oh, pigs were prolific. I mean, there were pigs. My grandmother was a pig.
Oh.
And on the second line of Scott, there used to be several families of pigs farm there at one time, and she called that Pegtown.
Huh.
It never was any such thing, but she referred that, I heard her say that many times from when she was a girl. So there were pigs. Well, there's pigs all over the place. There's still lots of pigs here.
Really?
And you say East Gwillimbury?
I'm more familiar with for example, Morton. The Mortons?
Oh, they were nothing compared to the pigs.
Oh, all right. Okay. So it was a large family. I'll look into that.
Yes.
Thank you. There's some names I wouldn't recognize either. The McMillan farm,
No.
Selby, Evans.
Evans, yes. That's from the fifth. If we're talking about the seventh, for the Evans family, I know it's on the fifth concession. What in heavens will that be? Wharton, above the Mount Albert Road a little bit on the west side.
How could you tell me about the concessions? How does that work exactly?
Well, this is a given road. This center road's a given road. It's Center Street. That's 48 was the 8th concession.
Okay.
So each town had 9 concessions. the next road over is the 9th concession.
Right.
Then we hit what we used to call the town line. That was between townships. And at that corner that I'm talking about, the first one over here, there's 4 town lines meet at one point. The Whitchurch, East Gwillimbury, Scott, and Uxbridge.
Right.
They meet right there at the point.
Wow.
But I'm not sure whether Scott have named their roads, but we just 20 years ago or something, we just took the roads that Toronto named it.
Okay.
McCowan.
Okay. And Kennedy.
Yeah.
And Warden.
They all came out of Toronto.
Okay.
And
Did they have other names before that, or it was concession
well, you
numbers?
lived on the 5th line.
All right.
Yeah. And then you tried to identify it, like this Davis Drive down here was a town line
Okay.
between us and Whitchurch, so you lived above the town line and concession 8.
So now I have questions.
Well, whatever I know.
Yeah. So I don't want to get too much into details either, but just the year you were, your name, your full name.
My name?
Yeah.
Louis Arnott Toole,
Louis Arnott Toole. And what year were you born?
1929.
All right. So you mentioned how your ancestor came to live here, but where were they from?
They came, well, they originally came out of Pennsylvania. I'm Quaker blood.
Okay.
They, after their Civil War, like the Quakers wouldn't fight, and the Mennonites, and the Americans were harsh on them. Sometimes they burnt their buildings, very harsh, so that my ancestors came back to the Crown.
Okay.
And they settled in the Niagara-on-the-Lake area when they came to Canada. Then the Yankees came over the border in 1812, and then they came further north to get away from the Yankees. But we are. It doesn't mean much anymore, but we are UE loyalists. Does that mean anything to you?
No, it doesn't.
United Empire loyalists.
I don't know what that is.
Well, now you're going to find out.
Oh, the UE, so United Empire Loyalists.
Yes.
Oh, all right.
The biggest settlement of UE loyalists was in Nova Scotia. But Eastern Ontario has a lot of UE. Things are changing rapidly now. The changes. There soon won't be anything left of what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost very little now.
Right.
You got to be an old man like me to
And the knowledge. You have the knowledge.
have to remember it.
Yeah.
But UE loyalists, if you were in Eastern Ontario for a long, long, long time, it was a source of pride. It was nothing they couldn't shame you with that. That was, it was a source of pride to be a UE loyalist. The rest were just immigrants, but
All right.
but they deliberately came to the Crown,
Wow.
and the Tooles were UE loyalists.
But was this after the Declaration of Independence?
Yes, but we didn't move. That was 1775, 1776. We weren't here then.
Okay.
It was the Civil War in the 1860s. After that.
All right. Okay. So, in general, you've always lived around in this area?
Well, Europe, like, the big end of Ontario till till maybe the middle of or after World War II, the big end of rural Ontario. Well, you ready for this?
Yes.
White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. I was born in East Gwillimbury, and until I went to high school, I never even saw a Catholic.
Really?
Let alone somebody's skin of a different color.
Really?
Never talked to them anyway. I went with Mother and Father when they shopped at Eaton's in downtown Toronto, and I don't remember seeing anyone of color.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But there rural East Gwillimbury was, as I say, white Anglo-Saxon Protestant to the last man or woman or child.
It's changing.
Well, there isn't, like, in the last, since we have large-scale immigration, different immigration, they have tended to make a joke of being WASP.
Yes.
They can't make that on. They can't do that to me.
Okay. All right.
I'm proud.
Also, WASP would be a white Anglo-Saxon
Protestant. That's what a WASP
That's
is.
what it means. All right.
That has got to be kind of a not so pleasant word for a lot, because at one time, well, in Toronto there was in the 18th century, 19th century, for quite a while there was in Toronto there was a ruling group called the Family Compact.
Right.
Right? So they had ultimate power. You had rights here, but if you needed something big done, you had to get by them.
Mm-hmm.
And for a long time in Toronto, well, that's where the big decisions were made. For a long time in Toronto, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants were in the high end of power.
Mm-hmm.
And it seemed to be a pleasure to take them out of that.
Oh, I see. All right. So there's
Yeah.
a bit of revenge in that.
Yeah, a little resent, yeah. If you had to go begging, that was not so much fun.
Mm-hmm. Right. You're right.
And it's changed a lot. After World War II, our immigration didn't affect us a whole lot. We got, you can edit this out if you like, we got white immigration.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
The Dutch, the Germans, the Italians were a little more tan, but white Christian.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that didn't really, there was no scramble. They had a hard time to get going,
Mm-hmm.
but they got going and just disappeared into as soon as their accent went,
They blended in.
they were there and you didn't know them.
Right. Well, I'll give you an example.
Yes.
I'm from Quebec.
Yes.
Catholic. Irish
Oh,
Catholic.
my God.
From Quebec.
My father thought that was the end of the world.
There you go. Irish Catholic, though. So in Quebec, I'm an English guy.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Wasn't in North America. That's not it. I'm trying to think of the act that guaranteed France its language, or Quebec its
I forget.
language.
Might have been the Quebec Act.
Quebec Act. That's it. That
Right.
guaranteed them their language.
Mm-hmm.
And when the Americans had their Civil War, a good deal of French Canadians went to the United States, Maine and all that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Well, they're anglicized.
Right. That's right. Right.
Had Quebec decided to leave English Canada, they would have been anglicized in the United States
Right.
because they didn't tolerate differences very
Right.
well.
All right. moving on from politics, we'll probably get back there
Sure.
we'll probably come back. Again, it's things that change. It
yeah.
changes.
Yes,
What's your earliest childhood memory?
Earliest childhood memory, I'll tell you. When I was maybe 3 or 4, Father was digging potatoes, and my mother had to put me into bed for a nap. And I went down to the barn, and there was a chap helping Father dig potatoes, Dick Graham. He hid me out in the potato shed, and I got away without a nap.
Wow. Graham, that's another name that's familiar around here.
Yes, well, there were Grahams in Franklin.
Okay. All right. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Franklin, was Franklin much bigger than it is today?
Franklin was never, they had a little industry, a pump house, and the last industry they had was a grist mill, hammocks.
Mm-hmm.
But it never really had certainly in my time there was no stores or anything like that. It was just a little spot with a few extra houses, and that was Franklin.